I'd like to start our meeting and welcome everybody here. My name is Lorraine Cunningham and I am the board chair for TransLink. And I'm pleased to be here today to welcome everyone to TransLink's 2016 annual general meeting. I'd like to first acknowledge that we're actually running two meetings here today. The first one is the AGM, and the second one is the open board meeting, which will start at 10 a.m. And I'd like to welcome everyone to stay for our open board meeting if they're available to do that. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting here today, and we operate our services on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people. The AGM is an opportunity for us to report on the past year of TransLink's operations, which is 2016. We'll then give you an opportunity to raise any questions and provide input on any transportation-related issues. After the questions and comment period, the AGM will formally end, and after that we'll take a short break and then we will start our open board meeting. What I'd like to do now is introduce my colleagues of the Board of Directors who have joined us here today. We have Janet Austin, who's sitting here, Larry Beasley, Jim Chu, Sarah Clark, Ann Giardini, Tony Gugliotta, Mayor Linda Hepner, and Marcella Sell. And Mayor Gregor Robertson was unable to join us here today as he's traveling. I'd like to, and Murray, I'm sorry, I jumped over you, Murray Dinwoody. Sorry, I was so busy reading through my list. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work and commitment of many of my fellow board members. I'm very pleased to serve with such a dedicated group, and we all benefit from their enthusiasm and diversity of experiences and the talent that they bring to the table. Also joining us here today are members of the TransLink executive team. I have the Chief Executive Officer, Kevin Desmond, sitting here to my right, the Chief Financial Officer, Kathy McClay, sitting to his right, the BCRTC President and General Manager, Vivian King, the bus company, so we call the rail company and the bus company, Hayden Asheson, and the Transit Police Officer, Doug Lepard, who's sitting at the end of the table. And I thank you all for joining us today. So now I'm going to talk about 2016. 2016 was a big year for TransLink. A number of decisions and initiatives in the past year have been pivotal in improving the customer experience, increasing our ridership, keeping our employees and public safe, and delivering on key projects. They've also laid the groundwork for the years ahead and the continued expansion and improvement of our transportation network to meet the needs of our growing region. In March, so I'm going to go through a few of the highlights. In March, we welcome our CEO, Kevin Desmond, who joined us from King County, Washington. His strong leadership and focus on customer service has helped us to energize TransLink. In April, we fully rolled out the Compass fare system and closed all the fare gates. It seems like a long time ago that it was only in April of last year. This was the final step in a rollout that ensured a smooth transition for our customers. They can now travel seamlessly across our network with one card. Our customers are embracing this new way of paying for transit. Today, close to 95% of the trips now involve a Compass card or Compass tickets. Following the gate closure, we began to see fare revenue increase, jumping 7% in the first weeks, and this trend continued through the full year of 2016. Compass is now providing important information on how our transit system is used and helping TransLink management make decisions to optimize our customer experience and to utilize the system better. In late August, the Patello Bridge reopened a month earlier than was originally scheduled. It fully closed in April for repairs. As you all know, that bridge is aging, and we wanted to do this to extend the life of the bridge deck so that we could keep it operational until we had an opportunity to replace the bridge. The bridge is one of the busiest crossings in the Lower Mainland, and so its closure and the early opening had a significant impact on commuters, goods movement, local residents, and all the businesses that use that bridge every day. In November, the board and the Mayor's Council approved the 10-year investment plan for Phase 1 of the Mayor's vision. And we deal with them in phases because it's such a big vision and such a big plan that we need to implement. We're trying to do it in phases, so that's why you hear all about the phases. The plan was a result of significant planning, public consultation, and technical work, and importantly, with the Mayor's Council throughout this process. With no significant investment in Metro Vancouver's transit system in almost a decade, the Phase 1 investments help us get started with meeting the growing demand for transit in our region. This plan gave shape and guidance needed to implementing the much-needed investment in transit infrastructure, bridges, cycling projects, and other priority service improvements. It also provided a significant funding lift for the major road networks, including new funding so municipalities can make overpasses, retaining walls, and bridges that are part of the major road network safer and more earthquake-proof. We work in partnership with our communities to identify and fund the road upgrade projects that will improve the flow of traffic across the region. Partnerships are critical in our ability to fund and implement the 10-year vision. The commitment from the federal government in their 2016 budget was the starting point for this plan and followed by the commitment from our provincial partners. We'd like to thank our federal and provincial partners for their contributions. We are already seeing the benefits of these investments. The plan was designed to ensure that some changes could happen right away. TransLink staff and management have said they're ready to deliver, and indeed, service improvements began to roll out early in the year. In December, the Millennium Line and Evergreen Line opened to the public. 11 kilometers opened to the new transportation choices for Tri-City region residents. We'd like to thank our provincial partners who again led this project and built that project out. Extending rapid transit to these communities opens up significant transit opportunities to help with traffic congestion and for businesses to attract new customers to their region. With the addition of the extension, we can proudly claim the distinction of being the longest fully automated driverless transit system in the world. Now we understand that that's going to be passed by another city soon, but right now we can claim that. By the end of the year, TransLink recorded record ridership numbers. Overall ridership was up 4.5% in 2016. This is a reflection of the commitment to customer service and the growing population in this region that is relying on TransLink to help get them where they need to go. In summary, an excellent transportation system underpins the economic health and vitality of a region by keeping people and goods moving. 2016 saw major investment in transit and transportation and a strong focus on customer service. As TransLink builds on this momentum, the board will continue to be steadfast in our commitment to hold the organization accountable and ensure customers are always our top priority. I'd like to now introduce Kathy McClay, who's our CFO, and Kathy is going to talk about the financial highlights from 2016. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine, and good morning and welcome, everyone. These are exciting times for TransLink. We have spent the last few years in a period of fiscal restraint, operating conservatively, building our reserves while developing our plans for the future. In 2016, we received approval for the funding of Phase 1 of the 10-year vision, which is going to allow us to increase service and improve the transportation experience for our customers. Based on strong financial performance in the past, I can confidently say that we're ready to hit the ground running and we'll start the execution on those plans immediately. We are accountable to the board, to the Mayor's Council, and ultimately our customers and our taxpayers. And that's a responsibility that I and the entire executive team take very seriously. Turning to numbers. I'm happy to report that TransLink continues to hold a very strong financial position. Compared to budget, total revenue was $463.7 million higher than the budget for 2016, mainly due to the sale of surplus property as well as higher revenues from fares and fuel taxes. Revenue from fuel tax was $35 million above budget, with lower prices at the pumps and the increased vehicle kilometers traveled within the region. An additional $52 million was generated by toll revenue for the Golden Ears Bridge. Transit revenue was up $33 million higher than budget due to the growth in ridership combined with the successful closure of the Compass Fair gates in April 2016. And our cost recovery was now up to 55%. More people are taking transit than ever. Our data for 2016 shows 234 million journeys across our network. That's an increase of 4.5% over the previous year. And we know that number is going to continue to grow. Kevin will speak about this more later on the customer focus. But what I can tell you, one of our key indicators is customer satisfaction. And that remains steady and for 2016 at 7.6 out of 10. Expenses increased by $18.7 million over the previous year, although not unexpectedly, as we increased staffing and service levels in support of the several new projects. Delivering more costs more, but expenses remain under budget. We saw a gain of $422 million on the disposal of assets from the sale of surplus properties. Most notably is the sale of the Oak Ridge Transit Center lands. This money will be reinvested in our next phase into real estate as we develop our new phase in Patello Bridge and Surrey, as well as the extension of the Millennium Line. Our capital assets increased by $261 million over 2015, thanks in part to the completion of the Hamilton Transit Center and the Evergreen Line extension. Spending on capital projects, investing in station upgrades, and in revenue vehicles such as the new Mark IIIs is essential as we continue to expand and improve our service. Maintaining a strong financial reputation and high-quality credit ratings is critical to ensure that TransLink can access the capital markets in a cost-effective manner. Both Moody's Investment Service and Dominion Bond Rating Services reaffirmed our AA credit rating in 2016. We also went back to the marketplace with our 9th bond and issued once again, and the market responded beyond our expectations, successfully bringing in $150 million that will go towards financing these capital projects. Since 2010, TransLink has raised over $1.3 billion of bond issues. That's a real testament to the confidence our investors have in what we do each and every day. With the funding now approved for Phase 1 of our 10-year investment plan, we are in a strong financial position and ready to deliver on those commitments. But we have no plans to relax. Our teams are hard at work as we move towards securing the funding of our next phase in partnerships with the federal, provincial, and regional governments. We will continue to be vigilant, applying the same level of scrutiny over how we spend taxpayers' dollars as we focus on meeting the current and future demands for a strong transportation network in Metro Vancouver. And now, for more updates of exciting opportunities that lie ahead, I'll turn the floor over to our CEO, Kevin Desmond.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Lorraine, and thank you, members of the public who came out this morning for our annual general meeting, and we look forward to hearing from you as well at the conclusion of my brief remarks. As you heard from Kathy and Lorraine, TransLink certainly accomplished quite a bit in 2016, and importantly, we ended the year with a solid financial base to drive forward and improve service, and that really is our priority at this point in time, improving service, improving the amount of service we can put out to respond to the needs of this region. This represented a significant work and commitment from all of the staff at TransLink and our enterprises, and I'm delighted to share the podium here this morning with Chief Lepard, Hayden Atchison, and Vivian King to help respond to your questions and observations this morning. But it was also the good work of this board and the good work of our Mayor's Council, with whom we work in partnership to drive these investments, to drive these opportunities forward, and in a very, very strong partnership with the province and with the federal government. With these partnerships, with the hard work of our policy leaders, we are focused on improving service and meeting the needs of this region. And while we made many advances in 2016, we certainly have a lot more work to do going forward. This region has a bright future, but many challenges. Chief of which is, how are we going to accommodate over 1 million people over the next 25 or 30 years going forward and still preserve the wonderful quality of life that we enjoy here? We have to find ways to improve the region's transportation capacity. I know in my travels throughout the region that every city in this region wants more transit. They want more of what TransLink can provide, and they want better transit. They also want the transportation options, the choices that people need to choose not to drive on congested roads, and thereby we can help manage the congestion on those roads that much more successfully for those who cannot take public transportation. We also know that if we put good transit out there, people will use it. We've seen the strong ridership growth ending last year, and this year ridership continues to grow at a very, very solid pace. And we will once again be in record territory by the time we end this year. We also have to keep pace with, in an era of rapid technological advances that are dramatically reshaping, if not disrupting, all of our mobility options, and we will continue to be very focused on that. We have here at TransLink a central role to play in the future of this region. And I expect that we will deliver here at TransLink on all of the commitments that we have made to date and that we will continue to make to improve services in this region and to begin even more thinking big. What is in the future? What's even beyond our current 10-year plan? Now, speaking of which, our first order of business in 2017 and beyond is to fully implement the 10-year plan that the Mayor's Council has directed us to implement. This year already, we've improved C-Bus service and SkyTrain service in January and then C-Bus again in May. We've added more service hours and capacity for our Handy Dart riders. We've had the largest bus expansion in about a decade here at TransLink. In April with 65,000 additional hours. Then again on this coming Monday, additional improvements and an even larger increase in service in September. That September increase not only will provide more service hours to relieve overcrowding on routes, but will also be creating new routes in 3 of the territories identified by the mayors that will now have service that does not exist. Also on Monday, the service improvement will be improving night bus service going forward. We've also made good progress on our capital program. We're well into the procurement of 28 additional SkyTrain cars, working with our supplier, and those cars should be here by the end of 2018 and beginning of 2019. Just last week, we signed a contract for the delivery of a new C-Bus vessel, which should also be here by 2019, and we are actively moving forward to improve, modernize, and expand our bus fleet going forward so that we can continue to improve and expand bus service. We're continuing to make very good progress on our 2 major rapid transit projects, the Surrey 27-kilometer light rail program and the Broadway extension of the Millennium Line. Both of these projects required fully funding from the province and the region, but we will be poised, if everything goes well in terms of the funding, to move forward with procurement in 2018. These are very exciting times. We are already out in our second round of public participation and public feedback. So in the months ahead, we look closely to work with the new BC government to successfully leverage the $2.2 billion that the federal government has promised to support the 10-year plan. But at the same time, we also need to continue to rehabilitate our aging infrastructure, replacing rail, accelerating the replacement of aged escalators and elevators. Many of our escalators and elevators are 30 years old, original equipment from when the Expo line was built and opened for service. Now, in order to accelerate that program, it will actually create more disruption in the system as we have to close off the escalators or some of the elevators to put in new equipment. So we have to be laser focused on how to manage the customer experience during those construction projects. And speaking of aging infrastructure, you saw on the slide from Lorraine a few minutes ago, our top priority is proceeding with the Patello Bridge replacement. This has to be done. We need to get to a final arrangement to finance the program in the short months ahead so that we can be ready to open the new bridge by 2023 and avoid any further disruptions in the operations of that bridge. Now, moving on to our customer. Clearly, providing safe, reliable, and efficient service is this organization's core responsibility. Those are the core responsibilities of my colleagues, Vivian, Hayden, and Doug. And we also need a sharp focus on attracting new customers and retaining existing customers with quality service and a quality customer experience. These are our priorities here at TransLink, to drive to those outcomes. In order to meet those outcomes, in large part, we have to anticipate current and even future customer expectations, and we have to innovate to do so. Some of the ways that we're doing so include providing better real-time information to our customers through our digital services. For example, increasing digital signage at bus stops, our rolling assets, and at key locations throughout the service area, including throughout the SkyTrain system, making improvements to our trip planner, and developing digital partnerships with other agencies and transit service providers. We're also looking at using our Compass platform, the Compass ticketing platform, to implement new and exciting payment options such as mobile-friendly open payments to reach new markets, to make it easier for visitors and occasional transit users to benefit from our great transit system and the Compass program. We're also exploring new mobility options like van pooling and partnerships with shared mobility services. These are the disruptors. We need to be part of it because we can bring all mobility options up in this region. TransLink can't do it all. Our buses and trains, Handy Dart, and C-Bus can't provide all the mobility outcomes. We need to partner with these shared services, these innovative entrepreneurs. And to that end, later this year, we hope to set up an innovation lab to help incubate new ideas and harness the benefits of emerging technologies. I also want to take a moment to talk about sustainability, climate, the environment. We're quietly working to reduce the energy use at our facilities, particularly our bus depots. CNBC has done some terrific work at their bus depots to see really large measurable decreases in energy usage. And we're also expanding, as we expand our fleet, we're also continuing to look at alternative fueling technologies to reduce our GHG footprint. Furthermore, as part of our low-carbon fleet strategy, we're in the process of evaluating low and zero-emission vehicles, such as battery electric buses. This technology is clearly emerging and emerging quickly here in North America. We're probably behind Asia and the China market in that realm. We need to catch up in that area, and I look forward to some exciting work over the next year or two to demonstrate the feasibility of zero-emission technology in our region. And I should point out we're already doing a lot of zero-emission with our trolley fleet in Vancouver, so we have a long history of experience with that. Finally, what's in the more distant future? As we're working to advance the 10-year plan, we also need to be looking even further. We heard in the throne speech yesterday a lot of great ideas, interesting ideas, to begin thinking about the longer term of transit development. We at TransLink, beginning in 2018, will begin a refresh of our long-range planning process, and I'm really excited to get started with that. And I'm even more excited to make that a very, very large public process. We need to hear from the people of this region. Where should our transit system expand to? How should we design that transit system to meet the needs of this community? That work, as I said, will begin next year, and I think a hallmark of that needs to be a significant public participation as part of that. So with that, we'll close, and I think we're looking forward to hear your questions and observations about our transit system. And again, Chief Lepard, Doug, and Hayden, and Kathy will all help to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. So are there any questions anybody would like to? Okay, so can you just manage the...
So Chris will provide the microphone to,
Sure, sorry, a little loud here, but sure, of course, we'll start here. We've got people bringing mics around. They'll hold them for you while you're asking your question. Just indicate to me, and Sorry, and anybody else who's asking questions, just, yeah, give me a nod. I'll nod to you and we'll make sure that we get to you. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. I'm curious how many of you actually ride transit 3 times a week. How many of you live in East Burnaby and get a bus once an hour after 8 o'clock at night in the middle of the city? How many of you have to pay double? Because if you don't load a Compass card, you're nowhere near London Drugs, you're nowhere near a SkyTrain. So I pay $2.75 to get on the bus, and then when I get to the station, that card's useless. So I can either walk in behind somebody else and hope I don't meet any of his people and get fined, because I've already paid once, but that card's no longer any good. Or I can load my card and now pay $11 for what should have been a $2.75 trip, because I have to pay $6 for that card. I then have to put a minimum of $5 on it. So you can see where somebody might get frustrated. Winter time, none of the drivers could get up Caribou Hill. Nobody tells you the bus is canceled. You stand out in the cold for a bloody hour and a half waiting for a bus. Frontline staff are great. The drivers I get are always wonderful. But you get very frustrated when they move those buses over to the new garage and the bridge is too crowded and they can't get across, so they just cancel the run. And you stand out there waiting and waiting and waiting. Meanwhile, 12 106s have gone up 6th Street. Back to back to back to back, because the route's too long and they can never stay on bloody time anyways. They're lovely, but. So if I'm coming across a little perturbed, bear in mind that I do think it's a hard job and you're not going to make everybody happy. I mean, that's the reality of what they're doing. It's never going to be perfect and there's always going to be people. But every time I read something about a transit upgrade, it's more buses downtown, it's this downtown, it's that downtown, but every news story you see is people are leaving the downtown because they can't afford to live there. But out here in the sticks, and I'm not really in the sticks, I'm 5 minutes up the hill here, there is nothing. And if you want people on there, you gotta offer the service. Even the little shuttle bus. 22nd Street after 8 o'clock at night, there is nothing there. 55 minutes waiting for a bus, there's nothing around you. You have more and more people living in that area, you need to up the service. And as for the Compass card rollout, when you're saying how wonderful it went, can you stand up for a minute, please? No, it didn't. There was a lot of people that couldn't access that because it never crossed anybody's mind that closing those gates wasn't going to necessarily work for everybody. And that's something, I mean, it is one of those systems that I'm sorry, it doesn't work for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. A few responses to your really good observations. And of course, we're not a perfect system. And the struggle that any transit system has in any urban areas, how to meet all of the needs in all the different ways that they manifest going forward. So your first comment about long waits for service and where we're putting our service hours, very well understood. You know, this organization has not had the ability to expand its bus system for a very long time. And I think we're now on the cusp of being able to put new hours out. And most of the new hours, particularly in the early portion of the program, are to improve frequency of service. So we've been very focused on overcrowded service. I mean, that's been, candidly, the primary place where we've needed to put the resources. We just don't like to leave people behind on crowded services. But we also know, particularly in suburban areas, we need to catch up on frequency. And in fact, to your point, the perception that all the hours are going to the downtown area, that's actually not true. The disproportionate majority of the service hours are going out to suburban areas. And I would credit the Mayor's Council, represented here today by Mayor Hepner. That was a very, very significant issue at the Mayor's Council. We need to make sure that we're catching up on service hours outside of the core urban area. It's been a long time getting there. It will take some time to achieve that, however. And if you want, after we're done here, maybe one of the planners could talk to you a little bit about, Jeff, raise your hand, about the specific issues you have. So we are moving in that direction. It will take some time. But as a transit user myself last night, for example, I came home fairly late in a meeting and I had to wait my time to get my little C3 bus up to where I live here in New Westminster. In terms of fares, we're in the second round now of a fare policy review, so we're looking at issues of the zone fares and if and how we can make it more equitable for folks using the system. So that, let me just finish, and then you can respond on the fare policy. And again, Jeff's group runs the fare policy. So we are looking at that, and we will be coming back to the board next year with a whole series of recommendations on where and how we might want to reshape the our fare system to make it more responsive to the public need. And the winter service, boy, I understand what you're saying. You know, I appreciate your compliment to our operators, and I know that's very important, but I'm sure we left a lot of people behind, and there's a lot of lessons learned. It's the first major series of snow events that this organization's faced in a number of years, and I think we need to dust off the way that we get back to our customers in real time. It's not easy to do that, but I think we can do better with real-time information when the system's disrupted.
My quick simple solution is the fare boxes on the bus should be able to sell you a Compass ticket. That's all it takes. I mean, I get there's money and you gotta build them and you gotta buy them and all that. But in reality, if I can buy it at a SkyTrain station, I should be able to buy it on the bus. And that's, you know, you don't need to do 20 meetings and 50 studies. It's a pretty simple solution, right? Not that you do that, but some organizations do that, right? It's a simple solution, it's just gonna cost you, and that's the reality of it.
Sure. So, again, thank you for your comments. Maybe I can address some of the comments on the Compass card. So the Compass card is designed, you put a $6 deposit, and you can get that deposit money back at any time. What it's really designed for is to always provide our users the last ride home. For exactly some of the things that you talked about, you don't have any money on your card, you can debit in that as well. A frequent user, I highly recommend getting a Compass card because that is a lower fare than the cash fare that you're receiving today. So if you do buy a Compass card, it's a $6 deposit, it's refundable. It's set up to in denominations of $5 and higher. So, one moment, please. And it is because of the coin issue that we have with it, as well as your comment about going from bus to rail and rail to bus. You can easily transfer from rail to bus. Unfortunately, cash customers going from bus to rail is another fare, and that's due to exactly what you said, because we do not sell Compass tickets on our bus system. We did the cost benefit analysis of that, and it's in a very, very expensive project to put Compass vending machines on each one of our 1,500 buses that are in service at any time. And as a CFO, that's one of the things I'm always trying to balance out, whether I invest money on those or invest it into something that can provide more service. And so unfortunately, it is one of the ones that we made a decision that we were going to invest into putting more money into service rather than putting them on our fare boxes. We're working on all of that.
And we'll just move on to this gentleman here and then this woman over here. So can someone grab him a microphone, please?
Something I want to add on top of the Compass card before I say my stuff later on. But what I'm saying is, like, for people who don't know about the Compass card, like myself, I've been using the Compass card ever since, like, even before it was actually launched. Like I got it earlier than some of the other people when I found out that you could actually get it. And from my experience, what I've noticed is, like, you can actually, like, load more than one product on there. Like for me, because I'm actually a monthly fare card user with just a one zone fare, but oftentimes I go multiple zones. So what I've actually noticed is I could actually put stored value and a monthly pass on there. And the good thing about what I like about the system is that the system's actually smart enough to actually deduct your passes first, so it'll only go into my stored value when it knows I've traveled more than one zone. So, like, for people who are saying, like, want to do that, you can actually just go ahead and put multiple products onto your fare. The only thing you can't do is load a day pass on there. I don't know if it's going to activate your day pass, because I made that mistake once and it activated my day pass, so I didn't want it to.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
You had a comment as well you wanted to make on something else?
It's my own stuff to say. Should I do it now or later?
Now would be a great time for sure.
And somewhat is, like, for me, being a regular day transit user, I've noticed, like, there's so many problems I'm trying to address right now. Like, the number one thing is like, for me, like, for me going to work in the early morning rush hour, like it happened to me this morning too, like getting pass-ups on buses. And it's like, I find this completely ridiculous. I have to phone into work saying that, oh, a bus is passing me up. I'm going to be late for work. It's happened to me so many times. The worst final scenario for me is I had 3 buses pass me by at once. Like they were all full, and then like being an hour and a half late for work just because of that, and I had to make a connecting bus. So like I've already know they like put a lot Arctics on a lot of the routes because of overcrowding issues. But like certain routes, like why can't they, like for me, I'm a 410 user all the time. It's my regular route. Why can't they put Arctics on the 410 just to address that overcrowding issues in the pass-ups? And as for that, like, and more thing, like as right now we're getting like buses coming in with the air conditioning. I've noticed there's problems with passengers not realizing there's air conditioning buses, like there's air conditioning on the bus, and what they notice is they still go ahead and open up the windows, and when they do that, I noticed the air conditioning isn't even working. It's all going out the window. So can you guys do something with like, yeah, I know the windows do have to be open in the event of an emergency, but can't you guys have it so that like there's no latch for passengers to open it? Like they're only electrically operated by the driver. So in the event of an emergency, the driver just goes ahead and opens up the windows. If there's and it's where the air conditioning is broken, we can't open up the window or something, where the driver will just go ahead and do it so that we don't open it unnecessarily and waste the air conditioning. And the other thing I have is like, I know these days electronics coming everywhere. I've been to places around like other places of the world, like I recently just went to Asia back in December, and I went again in September. Their buses there and trains have USB ports and power outlets for us to charge up our devices during the course of our trip. Why can't we do that here?
So a lot of great comments, and I'm going to ask Hayden to respond a little bit about the air conditioning and the windows open. I know that's a pretty classic issue in our industry, as well as the fleet deployment. But, you know, in terms of the crowding, that is where we're putting our initial resources. But there are limits to the, you know, number of articulated coaches that CMBC has. So it's an ongoing balancing, for sure. And let me turn it over to Hayden, and maybe he can elaborate a little bit on how to deal with the open windows and fleet.
Well, I think your point is well taken on when the air conditioning is on and then customers open the windows, and it's frustrating for everybody around. So we'll take that and review it. I think it's a very good point. We work on pass-ups all the time. We have pass-ups throughout the system. We only have so many articulated buses, but we continually look at redistributing our fleet and putting Arctics on where they're required to meet demand. So if you have some specific routes, I'd like to hear from you after the meeting, and you can give us those, and we'll take a good look at those. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
The charging.
Yeah, I think that's actually something I know we've been looking at actually for future fleets on the bus side is if and how, because they're made. Particularly highway coaches now, intercity highway coaches have USB ports and that sort of thing. So if and how we can introduce that within our transit fleet, that is something I know Hayden's brought that up with me before as well. So.
I know the Canada line used to have outlets on the train, but for some reason they took them all out.
Next question we have up here, this woman up here.
I'm wondering when or if you are bringing back the annual BC Bus Pass. I am deaf and have cerebral palsy. The $100 monthly pass is ridiculous because it runs out before the month ends. Another thing I would like to see next year is a sign language interpreter, because this is a public meeting.
Thank you. Maybe I can answer the question on the bus pass program. We work very closely with the provincial government, the province of BC, and actually the BC Bus Pass program is a provincial initiative and we only support it. So my recommendation is that you work directly with the provincial government on that one.
And I think that's a good suggestion on the signing as well in the meetings. I think we can take that and give that some thought with the board on the best way to respond to that.
Next question we have at the back there. Taran, did you have a question?
Just wondering if you could maybe comment on some of the commitments that were made in the throne speech yesterday, and as either the Liberals or the NDP at this point, both of them are now making commitments to TransLink, to improving public transportation, but a big thing is eliminating tolls on the Golden Ears and the Portman. So I was wondering if you could maybe comment on that, give a little bit of your thoughts on some of the commitments that are being made.
Well, pretty much all I'll say to that is that we look forward to working with the government. Once a government forms, we're clearly in a transitional period at the moment. Lots of interesting things were in the speech yesterday. Lots of interesting things were proposed by the other party. So until we've got a government to work with, I think we need to leave it at that. There's a lot on our agenda. As I said, I think the priority of this organization, as set by our Mayor's Council and this board, is to drive forward on the 10-year plan. And that's what we're going to be very much focused on. We have to have full funding for the Patello Bridge. The issue of tolling does affect the Patello Bridge project, and that is something that we need to be clear with the new government to understand how to finance that bridge properly so that we can get started with the project, so that we can have a new bridge in place by 2023. Other than that, moving forward with the existing rapid transit projects that we are well underway, the Surrey Light Rail program and the Millennium Line extension on Broadway, as well as the other capital elements, the 10-year plan. Those are our priorities, and those are the priorities we will be taking forward to the new government.
Any questions from the public before we wind things up?
I think she had a follow-up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I just wanted to ask, because I think you said here that 52 million in tolls from the Golden Ears, was that correct? So then, if that's such a big chunk of change and that's going to affect you, that's just the Golden Ears and the Portman, are you going to try to make sure that these tolls stay in place? Because you're going to lose a lot of money if they get eliminated.
Well, as I said, we need to work with whatever the new government is, and that will be an issue that, depending on how the new government wants to move forward with that. Now, both the existing government and the other party have indicated an interest in removing the tolls from the Portman Bridge and the Golden Ears Bridge. We do know that we've been told that if they ask us to remove the tolls from the Golden Ears Bridge, that we would be compensated from that. So it would be very important to have that discussion with the province, because that would be money otherwise that would be taken from transit service, and we know how desperately we need to keep maximizing our finances to get better service out in the field.
And we have a question up here at the front, and then a gentleman at the back. Oh, sorry, just hang on a second. It was this gentleman here first. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Raj Anchua, and I just need to know what are the plans for North Shore Transit Depot, if there are any in future.
Well, in the near term, there are service improvements I don't have offhand. Jeff could maybe respond to you offline after the meeting on some of the specifics. But we've been putting out new service hours throughout the region. The North Shore has and will benefit from service hours. Maybe the most, in the near term, the most notable is the B line that we will be having in place by 2019 on the North Shore along, more or less, is it Marine Drive? Marine Drive. So that's going to be in place by 2019. The improved C-Bus service. In fact, we've done 2 rounds of C-Bus service improvements in January, weekend service, and then just about a month ago on May 19th, we moved to essentially 15-minute service all day, and in fact, we're seeing nice response on ridership. So I think significant improvements to the North Shore, that's really where we need to get into the long-range planning. How do we really think about, perhaps differently, how transit service provides relief to the North Shore congestion? I mean, I hear from the mayors on the North Shore who sit on the Mayor's Council, and I think every meeting we have with them, there is some comment on it's getting worse, congestion's getting worse. So how the region collectively can think about providing relief to the North Shore, I think that's something of a more long-range conversation, but it's something that's on, I think, everybody's mind.
We have a question. Did you say, were you first? Okay, sorry. Gentleman at the back, here's the next question, and then up at the front, and then here.
Yeah, hi. I've been born and raised in Vancouver since the 60s, and I was lucky enough to be blessed to grow up in West Van, where they have a different service from TransLink. And I don't know whether it was because they're exceedingly stingy with their investments. They invested in higher quality buses, I guess, and the buses lasted 40 years. And we're able to, every bus was able to transition from Horseshoe Bay along the highway out to UBC. And they had the, express access onto Lionsgate Bridge. So instead of waiting an hour and a half in traffic to get over the bus, or over the bridge with the car, you could get on the bridge a lot faster by taking the bus. And I was also blessed that the service over there was exceptional. I never had to wait more than 5 minutes for a bus. I mean, a bus was never delayed more than 5 minutes. And it didn't matter how much snow we got in the British properties or around West Van, the buses always worked on time, all the time. When I moved outside of West Van to TransLink service, I was really disappointed at the buses now only seem to last 10 years long, and they're really rusty looking and in kind of sad shape. They're a lot easier to board, but in the 70s, a small third world country town called Kiribati was able to take a whole view of the whole city, and they had 6-lane highways coming into the city with 1940 style cars, and the pollution was quite a bit of a problem. So they bought 6,000 buses, and the buses are level with the sidewalks so wheelchairs can come in. So they made it a very simple approach. Each bus stop has a fully enclosed waiting room where you pay before you get into the bus stop, so the bus drivers don't have to worry about, fare evasion. So it's a lot quicker and easier for people to get on and off the buses, where here we have these complicated ramps. They have to wait 5-10 minutes to get on and off, and people can load the buses from every access door, whereas here you can only load on at the front. So it seems fairly inefficient. Anyway, and the other thing was a lot of jurisdictions, Norway and even New York, their ferry systems are going fully electric. And it would have been nice had the C-Bus gone that route when they got their new C-Buses. New York, they've had electric C-Bus or electric transportation in their harbor for at least the last 5 years. So I was kind of surprised they went still sticking with diesel.
Well, thank you. Lots there. First on the Curitiba service, I've been to Curitiba, so I've seen the BRT there and elsewhere in the world. While that type of outcome is probably not feasible here for many different reasons that I don't have time to get into today, I think that the issue is, as we're looking in the future with our next long-range plan, is how we can think about whether it's rail, whether it's rubber tire, if it's going to be BRT, where BRT might make sense, where BRT is bus rapid transit, and where we can think more holistically about the overall right-of-way space. How do we use our right-of-way for cars, the sidewalk space, for pedestrians, the level boarding, very, very important. And I think many of the BRTs, even in the United States, have tried to get to the level boarding to make it closer to rail. So those are things that we should be thinking about. And I think we have thought about that. For example, for the Surrey project, when the options analysis was done several years ago, BRT was one of the options at the time. We ended up selecting light rail. So your point's well taken, and where and how you can make that work within a built environment. Curitiba had the advantage of developing that in an environment that really wasn't a built environment, so they could really layer that in advance of the development around. In terms of the West Seattle, excuse me. I still do that every once in a while.
It's been 15 months.
I know, that still happens every once in a while. In terms of the West Vancouver service, we actually integrate fully with West Vancouver. We do, it is operated under contract to CNBC through West Vancouver, but in terms of the planning of the service, the resources for the service, and the fleet is all fully integrated with CNBC and TransLink. The age of the fleet it's an interesting one. We have buses that are 17 plus years old now, diesel buses, which is a long time. My experience in the United States, we generally don't keep buses that long. That's not so much the case in Canada, where buses are kept on the road a little bit longer. I think you have to find that right balance point. How long can you preserve the life of the bus to manage your resources as effectively as possible, but you don't want to throw good money after bad. And at some point as well, the buses, they're just not providing a quality customer experience as well. So that is something we need to look at for sure.
Well, the other thing I had is the old trolley buses versus the new trolley buses could operate under freezing temperatures. They're a little bit more herky-jerky, but the new buses from Germany are so technologically advanced that they automatically cut out when they don't get the power. And I don't know, it's not, when it works, it's great, but when it doesn't work, it's not as great.
We don't have any buses from Germany. No.
Okay, thank you. We're just going to move on. We just got a couple more questions. We're trying to get through till 10 o'clock. We have this gentleman here, and this gentleman has a second question, but we'll actually try and get you in first before you, because then we'll move on to the second question. So right here is our next question. If we can try and keep it as brief as possible,
good morning.
we can get everybody in.
My
Thank you.
concern is about the fare system. Is there any thought of changing the fare system instead of zone by zone? We charge the passengers by distance traveled, because, you know, if I travel from Scott Road to Columbia, I will be paying the same as the one who travels from King George to Metrotown or Joy Station.
Yeah, very good question. That is exactly the type of issue that the Fare Policy Review is looking at now. So we've done now two rounds we've already done in the public on the fare review. We'll be doing a third round later on this year coming up. But that's one of the major issues that we've heard from the public. You know, those arbitrary zone boundaries, when people are just traveling in short distance between the zones, is that fair? The balance point, I think, on our fare policy is simplicity. You know, how easy is it to understand and use versus a complexity that might better be nuanced to how people use the system. So we want to try to find that balance point, whether it's distance-based fares, zone or distance-based, whether it's time of day, peak, off-peak type of utilization, whether it's by the type of service as well. So you get an express bus route, a B-line, local bus route, et cetera. So we're looking at all of those issues. Maybe when we break, we can connect you with one of the planners that's managing the Fare Policy Review and can tell you how to get involved.
Okay, we have a question right here, and then we'll go to the back here before we go into a second question if we have time.
Good morning. We are here on behalf of the Capilano Students Union, and we were just wondering if you guys have any updates on whether FIBS will be upgraded anytime soon, or whether there's a timeline on that.
When? When is it? When? So that's a funded project in our Phase 1 program that was adopted last fall, and that project will be online by 2019, and Sandy Zane, our head of our engineering department, offline can give you more details about the project.
Question from the back here, Daryl.
So I'm pretty sure that everyone is aware of the news. We saw yesterday's Roan speech by Premier Christy Clark, and we now know that both major parties, the BC Liberals and the NDP Green Coalition, are committed to removing tolls from our regional bridges. I think the strong commitments from both parties clearly suggest this is wanted by voters across the region. Now I understand there are strong concerns with the Pattullo Bridge on funding-related matters. I'm also wondering, how does TransLink expect to account for the effects on things like the business case, ridership estimates of our major transit projects? I mean, does this not change everything? Specifically, I'm concerned that the South of Fraser light rail project as planned might not sustain enough ridership to have a solid business case or generate enough fare revenue to make sure we can cut back on any operating deficits. And now I say this knowing that many light rail systems in North America have faced service cutbacks because of initial service plans that weren't financially sustainable for the operator. I think this is a legitimate long-term concern for transit users south of Fraser. to me, it doesn't really seem like the selected rapid transit projects are even viable anymore. I'm just wondering, is there much of a plan to deal with this?
So as I said before to the previous question on the tolling, that is, those are all good observations, and we need to work with the new government on the effect of tolls and no tolls, because, through our traffic modeling, it will change how we would predict people use our transportation network. So that's something that we will eagerly have the conversation with the new government about.
Last question over here, and then we'll wind things up.
Yeah, it's just something that came up, actually two things connected this. One thing is, I noticed, drivers have, washrooms that they can use at, bus loops and stuff, and, SkyTrain attendants have their own washrooms as well. So, for me, coming here this morning, I had to purposely get on the SkyTrain, go one stop to New West, just to use a washroom before I made my way here. So can't you guys think of an idea of installing passenger washrooms at major bus loops and stuff, so we can use the washroom just like the drivers do? Yeah, maybe it's because of a vandalism issue, but maybe have our compass card as a key to open up the washroom, just so that people are not vandal stuff can't go in there, and the homelessness can't sleep in there. And another thing is I noticed our fare gates. Having the fare gates closed during major events like hockey games, big running events, a good example is this Sunday, the Scotiabank Half Marathon, or Celebration of Light and stuff. I attend a lot of those events. Coming back, leaving the fare gates closed, everybody having to tap. I noticed not only does it take a long time, it can glitch up the whole entire system. When I was coming back from the BMO run, people had to tap their fare gates. That whole entire system actually froze at Waterfront Station. The line extended all the way up from the Canada line, all the way up into the Waterfront Station building, just because the fare gates were frozen. So for big events like this, can't you guys just leave the fare gates open so you can just walk right through, and then maybe just do a fare check at the platform or something, just to prevent people from sneaking into the system?
So Vivian, Vivian's an avid runner as well, so she goes to a lot of these events. Maybe Vivian, president of our rail company, can respond to that.
Well, I can share because I am an avid user of the system. I use it morning and night, so get around everywhere. The toilet issue is something that you experience across a lot of railways. And I actually was speaking to my staff recently, and they raised it with me, and we found that there were a whole bunch of apps that were available that will tell you where toilets are in our city. And I didn't know that. And our staff are going to share those directions to people to at least get them to a direction where they can use a toilet. It's about investing. It's about understanding what our infrastructure is and what we have available. And our staff will always help someone that needs to desperately use a bathroom. So we won't turn people away. So that is a challenge for us in the sense of how many public bathrooms are around. As for the opening of the gates, we do encourage participants to buy their tickets prior to the event. We have our staff around before the event, and we get that message out there. We put signs out, and I would encourage anyone to buy their return ticket if they are not a regular user. Yeah, so...
in front of you, it says, no, bang, you've got nothing, try it again, and it just slows everybody down.
Yeah, it's a tapping issue.
Okay, well, that's something that I'll talk to our Compass Card team. We have adjusted the timing previously, I know that, because they were taking too long to close, and that was causing problems as well because people were tailgating, and of course that's not part of the system. So, we will look at that. If we get reports of it, we will certainly get our technicians to investigate it. On the whole, I think, the Compass Card and the gates work very well. I come from, a lot of other railways, and I can assure you this one is a very good system, and the timing of it is quite good. Of course, when you get very large crowds and it's putting pressure on the system, it's not a day-to-day issue, but we certainly will have a look at that. So thank you for that feedback, and we'll follow up.
Okay, thank you everyone. That concludes our Q&A session. We'll close that portion of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for coming. This will conclude the AGM. As I said at my opening remarks, we are now going to move into our open board meeting after a brief break. We just have to make a few adjustments here, and then we'll proceed to our open board meeting, and you're all welcome to stay for that as well. But first and foremost, I want to thank you all very much for coming to our AGM and learning all about 2016. Thank you.